I have finally found the most difficult question within all the universe that I have ever faced. To know the answer to this question would mean the possibility of that person surviving beyond the end of existence as they know it. My mind-blowing quantum mystery, this has led me to dimensional now perspectives. The theory begins around a simple question of time perspectives on a cosmic scale. Basically, when is the actual moment of now when dealing with two people in different parts of the universe? To each one, when they say the moment is now, is when it is. But from a third-person perspective who can view both places in the universe the people are in at the same time, the moment of now is altered by their perspective, literally making the answer to be dependent on who is asking the question. Now let's expand upon that. We exist in a third-dimensional perspective, so we perceive everything from a third-dimensional frame. But let's say, this universe ends and collapses in on itself until everything in the universe is compacted into a single finite beam of light, and then bam! The singularity collapses in on itself after swallowing all that is causing the gamma radiation, Hawking radiation, to rapidly expand itself until the event horizon can no longer support the gravity, and in a microsecond, due to structural collapse of the vortex, well, the forces are reversed and a white hole forms in that split moment, causing the Big Bang to occur all over again, only this time all the particles of our 3D universe have been merged with the other particle fields that made up the fabrics of our universe, giving transition to a four-dimensional universe. In this theory, what would the now perspective of time itself be? What would its fundamental laws of physics be? Would that universe even require physics, or would the laws of physics just redshift into another purpose as it did when the astral realm of the 2D universe ended and their laws of physics, emotion and elemental, changed into what it did when this universe of our 3D perception began? I know that within the videos I've done so far lies a breakthrough in quantum field studies that has not been put into a standing theory as of yet. But how can an adept in mysticism test the wisdom of the stars he has obtained? Very simple, through the craft of spiritual transition. A secret of the arcane arts and their ability to know and track the motion of the stars around us lies in a very ancient and archaic form of magic known as soul transcendence. It is widely known to us now that everything around us consists of particles of bosons, photons, electrons, neutrons and protons, including our own bodies. That the living, carbon-based life forms that we are consist of an arrangement of these particles that have been fused together to create each human being. Our ancestors understood that as well. They also understood that each body housed and charged network of particles that was basically what they referred to as the inner man or the soul of each person. In ancient pre-civilization tribes there was a group that believed that if the body came into being from fused particles, then further fusion could be possible as well. Many types of cultural backgrounds were founded from this theory, alchemy being one of them. In alchemy, the theory of fusing elemental properties together could give way to a new, unknown and undiscovered elemental properties. This process was one of the great foundation points of today's modern science that we can attribute 95% of all current technological, medical and pharmaceutical research and breakthroughs discovered and used today. Although we have come far from the archaic days of cauldrons and potions, there is a lost science within its history that predates the era of alchemy that is known to those sorcerers and wizards as goblin magic. Goblin magic is the precursor science to alchemy, which focused its process on the fusion of people's life force energies with elemental properties that would give that individual an empathic connection to the functions of that element. Another such cultural belief is centered around the Younger Dryas cultures that coexisted around the same era of each other but on opposite sides of the world. Where the Goblin culture of Pre-Asian society dwelled, which they refer to as the Unit. The Younger Dryas culture around the regions of Greenland, Germany and Scandinavian areas believed in an early form of Celtic belief that the Earth itself was a living life force whose life flowed beneath the surface of the planet and sometimes surfaced in spots they called mana pools. Today's science does not deny their claimed belief but actually corroborates it. In modern science, they refer to this living life force beneath the surface as the Schumann resonance, and they have detailed its scientific origins and its purpose as it is the vitality that supports our magnetosphere, which protects us from cosmic and solar radiation and is a key factor that makes life possible on this planet. The source cause of it is said to be from the tidally locked orbiting presence of our moon that causes the iron and nickel deposits within the core mantle of our planet to react. That creates a magnetized effect when they grind against each other. The natural rotation of our planet provides the inertia of this process that fuels the entire dynamo-type process that results in a low-level emission of gravitational force to be expelled from the core of the planet. As that wave of gravitational force slowly makes its way to the surface, it must first pass through solid elements that inhibit and direct its imagery waves flow. As it does this, the gravitational wave goes through a process of transition. Once the gravitational wave reaches the solid sediment crust, that energy is altered into another form known as sound waves. This sound wave is the Schumann resonance that can be observed at a specific frequency of 7.83 MHz. As this sound wave travels through the crust, it is met with surface elements that alter the path and direction of that sound wave due to the density of the elements it passes through, causing the sound wave to intersect with itself and merge pathways into what can be described as river-like areas of converged flow. These life streams of the planet, as they have been called by some cultures, then breach the surface of the planet. However, when doing so, it goes through another transition, since there is no more resistance to its flow of energy, and becomes kinetic energy waves which plume upwards from the northern and southern magnetic poles as it creates the magnetic charge of each pole in the process. This kinetic energy is then dispersed into the outreaches of our atmosphere, which creates a layer of protective shielding from things like cosmic radiation and solar radiation, which would cook any living life on the surface if not deflected by this protective layer that we call our magnetosphere. How's that for a non-high school graduate? It can be deduced by a simple example of shared traits, or as the Egyptian cultures would refer to as it as above, so too shall it be below. Notice that our observations of the Earth's magnetosphere is almost identical in the observation of each person's life force flow. Our aura fields and chakras are designed almost exactly the same as our magnetosphere, and the design of our solar system is similar to that of our magnetosphere, and the rotation of our galaxy is once again similar to that of all the listed below, and once again the Lane-Kia supercluster of galaxies are designed in a similar plume-like flow as all the others. So thus it can be expected from example that the entire universe is molded as well by this fundamental design characteristic. However, it is also observed that large amounts of gravitational force caused by objects with immense amounts of mass can alter the structure and flow of this fundamental characteristic. So though it may have been originally designed that the boundaries of the universe itself was set at a curvature pattern, over time that may have changed with the development of immense stellar mass objects and their gravitational effects. But if that were so, then wouldn't the Earth's magnetosphere become altered with this changing effect? It just may be, but this kind of altering effect would take time to affect us, I believe, considering our observed place in the scale of the cosmos. Next I shall go over the immense gravitational objects known as black holes. These objects are listed as consisting of infinite gravitational mass, which I think is the equivalent of a physicist answer of I'm not sure, but here is my best educated guess. For in my observations nothing that has physical mass at all is ever infinite. So let us go through the creation scenario of a black hole's formation. Every object in the universe is constantly in motion. Though we may not see it with our eyes, we observe it in the stars above. Just this planet alone, they say, is hurling through space at speeds of 63 million miles per second. So what happens when you have an object flying at those speeds that suddenly collides with an object of similar size but is traveling at close to twice the other's speed going in the opposite direction? It's completely obliterated into finite pieces of dust. However, what if you took that object and the collision caused all forward momentum to cease? not explode and sending the inertia of that object or its kinetic force to be distributed outward, but rather all kinetic momentum to suddenly stop in its tracks. It would cause all that kinetic force to cease, all forward momentum, and become centralized on the region that was once its fundamental center of motion, which causes that kinetic inertia to dig into the very fabric of space and time to compensate for its loss of motion. That centralized direction of motion becomes what we call a singularity, as that kinetic force is fused together in that finite point, creating the vortex well of gravitational force of the black hole. All matter that falls into the vortex of the well is met with a sudden effect centrifugal motion distorted by the bending of the fabrics of space itself, caused by the impact, which creates a curvature of time, as time is an imprint upon the very fabrics of light itself, much like a CD is imprinted with data. But the vortex is not a singular direction of one-way motion, but rather a immensely small point of curvature at the singularity point. Only particles that have been stripped bare of all other fused particles except for X-rays and gamma waves are capable of escaping the gravitational velocity of the vortex. However, in doing so, those particles that do escape, once they cross the event horizon and re-enter normal space without the effects of the vortex to inhibit it, it would be traveling at speeds well beyond that of the speed of light, creating what I believe they call fast radio microwave bursts. I also believe that another effect occurs in this process that may be the source of the beginning of time itself. Those particles that are ejected at those immense speeds cannot remain confined within the boundaries of existence and are catapulted beyond space and that of time itself to a point beyond the beginning of the moment of the first expansion. Stripped of all fused particle mass at such extreme speeds would leave raw nonlinear particle mass to build up beyond time and space in what I would call the primordial void until the moment of the first boson fusion. With all the necessary elements present but without charged fusion, the sudden introduction of fusion would rapidly expand in an effect similar to that of a backdraft in a fire, causing the event we know as the Big Bang. Scientists haven't discovered this yet because they don't have the equipment to detect it, but the center of our galaxy is not just a black hole. Black holes dig a vortex well of gravity into the fabrics of space and time, or in Einstein's conjunction of the two words in his thesis of general relativity, what he calls the fabrics of reality. They are not mathematically capable to be mobile or in motion because of this. But our galaxy is constantly in motion along with everything within them. How is this so? Because the black hole in our core is surrounded by a type of star whose composition is not yet detectable by our sensors. If they were, they would have known of this before the Voyager probes left our solar system, where they encountered a wall of fire and intense heat like that of a star, when they expected to instead be confronted by the cold, freezing temperatures of deep space. They experienced this because we exist within a quasar-star whose center of immense mass is balanced by a black hole within its central region. The central black hole is actually held in a balanced equilibrium within the core of the star that radiates on a spectrum beyond our senses' ability to register. The relativistic jets plume out and curve along the edge of the quasar's surface, and the energy emitted by the star creates a harmonic resonance with the black hole within its core, therefore causing the black hole to negate its gravitational well from digging into the fabrics of space, and it becomes a mobile black hole that travels in synchronicity with the star and the galaxies within it. Also, the black hole's presence allows the density of the star to remain minimal enough due to the presence of the ion cloud bands that constantly break down solid particle formation, allowing the quasar's particles to remain as scattered and as spread out as possible except for random void-like areas. These areas, like ours, are where planetary formations and solar systems are able to maintain solid mass within the boundaries of these voids. Think of our solar system to be like a sunspot within the star. Each solar system, like our solar system as well as all systems within the thousands of systems we've found, are like sunspots. Regions of neutral temperate conditions created by the system's central star, which is in turn made from the particles of the quasar's particle material itself, only more dense than the quasar itself. These dense identical particles create a repelling effect within the quasar, creating a barrier against stellar particles that allows solid matter to form, cold regions to exist, and even life to forms like that of our planets to evolve. Evidence of this can be found in the Voyager probe's experience of a wall of fire they hit once they left the solar system and entered deep space. As long as that equilibrium is maintained, then the black hole remains dormant and kept that way by the quasar star around it. Once an object travels near enough to the dormant black hole, that balance is disrupted and the black hole flares out a violent flash of its relativistic jets and thus awakens the black hole until the quasar star's mass decreases to the proportion of equilibrium with the black hole, in which it will again enter a phase of being dormant once again. This process, if true, then would have a direct effect over the speed in which a galaxy travels and what direction it travels in, as well as the possible sudden change in both momentum and direction depending on the disturbance within its core based on the mass of whatever object was to be devoured by the black hole, which would dictate the degree of imbalance respectively to the amount of alteration of the galaxy's speed and course of direction. The gravitational pull of a black hole is dependent upon the object's total stellar mass when it collapses into the singularity while traveling at speed in excess of 2.7 times the speed of light, squared by the root of the object's particle speed divided by its respective kinetic force generated by that object's motion and multiplied by the density of the particle field at the point of impact, which is measured by the slip particle wavelength string theory, which will give us the total collision force's square root, which is the gravitational force of each black hole's strength. The condensed core is the bulb of the Milky Way and is, in principle, the effect of what occurs when there is no vortex gravity well of a black hole for matter to be directed into. It instead is plumed outward into a thin inner core layer of a galactic center. But the particles quasars consist of do not condense into solid particles very thickly because of the lack of the gravity well, and is spread out in a thin layer-like pattern. The ever-increasing mass of a quasar star is balanced and made possible by the black hole that is kept full from the star's energy, keeping the vortex of the black hole full and unable to dig deeply into the fabrics of reality, thus allowing consistent motion of the galaxy. When the mass of the quasar reaches its limits due to material available, then the quasar stops increasing its mass, which causes the black hole in the center, which was dormant, to then go active and consume itself until the quasar encounters material that it can begin transitioning to fuel and increase its mass again. Then the black hole in the center will go dormant once again once the equilibrium has been rebalanced. The material that makes up the quasar is photon energy derived from the Higgs boson field of the cosmic microwave background, which were the first energies that came into fusion during the expansion era of the dawn of existence. This could also be the reason for the miscalculation in the Higgs boson field ratio that leads many scientists to theorize there is an imbalance in the boson field, when in fact that imbalance is caused by the fact that our view comes from within an object that draws its energy from its source and is the cause of that distortion within the field. The black hole also allows the quasar's immense mass to exceed the limitation of mass allowed in an object before it collapses into a black hole.